Hello everyone, Ember Power here, and welcome back to a new video. In this one I'm going to be talking about Spiritomb, which is a toolbox deck that I've been working on. So basically the main premise is that you're focused around the stage 2 KingGambit that has the ability Leadership that says your basic Pokemon's attacks do 30 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon before applying weakness and resistance, which is a very strong ability, but the problem is it is on a stage 2. But at the very least, because it's a support ability, it basically means that we're not worried about attacking with KingGambit. Like, you really could attack with Hackett if you really wanted to, and you wanted to use like double turbo energy and all that. But essentially, we're not going to care about that. So KingGambit is essentially a support Pokemon, which really improves this as a stage 2 deck because it means we could just set one up in the background without having to, get this guy going by turn 2 or even turn 3. So that's kind of like why I like it as a stage 2 deck. And as for main attackers, we have Spiritomb, which has the amazing ability Curse Message and the attack Chain of Spirits. Chain of Spirits for 2 Dark Energy does 10 damage and then 60 more for each Spiritomb in your discard pile. Then, of course, we do have 2 copies of Ditto, which will allow us to copy Chain of Spirits if we have any Spiritomb in the discard pile. So what this means is that Chain of Spirits can theoretically do all the way up to 190 damage if we have 3 Spiritomb in the discard pile, which is basically what we want to be doing because it means that we can then do 220 if we have a KingGambit in play. So that's pretty decent. But then it also means that if we get the full max of 4 Spiritomb in the discard pile, which is 250, and then of course we attack with Ditto at that point, and then we use KingGambit's buff, we are doing 280 damage. So yeah, pretty strong combination in that regard. Then we also have the ability Curse Message, which is really important. It says if this Pokemon is knocked out by damage from an attack from your opponent's Pokemon, search your deck for a card and put it into your hand, then shuffle your deck. So essentially a free tutor that your opponent can't ever disrupt really because it comes into an effect, after Spiritomb gets KO'd. So very useful ability and allowing us to set up. As for other attackers, I am playing 1 copy of Galarian Moltres that I may cut yet because it's not brilliant to be honest, especially when I'm only playing 6 copies of basic Dark Energy. But this guy can be put into play immediately with 2 Dark Energy attached to it. And then the attack Fiery Wrath for 2 Dark and a Colorless does 20 damage and then 50 more for each price card your opponent has taken. So, pretty potent in the mid to late game. But of course, needing 2 Dark Energy is going to be fairly annoying to get this guy going consistently. I also play 1 copy of Cramorant with the amazing ability Lost Provisions that says if you have 4 more cards lost on, ignore all energy in this Pokemon's attack cost. So essentially you can use Spit instantly for free and do 110 damage. So with KingGambit, that's 140. So you're effectively 2-hit killing V-Stars and EX, which is pretty good. It also means that we run the Colorus engine. So we run 4 copies of Colorus Experiment. So we can try and use this as soon as like turn 2, turn 3. But because we're not playing like any Comfey or anything like that, I only play 1 copy of Cramorant. Admittedly, I might cut the Galarian Moltres yet and add in a 2nd copy of Cramorant because, it's just such an efficient attacker, but I kind of don't want this deck to become a Lost Zone deck. I'd rather it has its own identity as a toolbox deck. So then at that point, the last few attackers that we really need to talk about is probably Radiant Charizard, which has the amazing attack Combustion Blast that does 250. And then, of course, with KingGambit, we're doing 280, which is a very important number. So 280 will allow us to KO V-Stars and EX. But if we factor in something like a Defiant Band or a Choice Spell, we can get all the way up to 310. Which is pretty big because it means that we can knock out stuff like Mew VMAX. So, yeah, very strong attacker. We also have 1 Manaphy for some bench protection against Urshifu because losing multiple of these guys in a single turn would be obviously very bad. Then, of course, 1 copy of Mew, which isn't super essential, but it has been very useful. And I kind of only have room for 1 copy, so it just made sense to sort of just throw it in there anyway. So we also play 6 copies of basic Dark Energy to attack with Spiritomb or Ditto, and then 2 copies of basic Fire Energy because we do need to find them to attack with Radiant Charizard. As for the trainers, we have a rather interesting selection. We have 4 Ultra Ball to allow us to discard other resources to find a different Pokemon, 3 copies of Raihan because the attack cost of Spiritomb or Ditto is very awkward. We also have 2 copies of Rescue Carrier, 2 copies of Defiant Band, 4 copies of Trekking Shoes, 1 copy of Clara, 3 copies of Rare Candy, 3 copies of Pokegear, which I wasn't sure about initially, but it's been super useful in tracking down the supporters that we need on that turn specifically, so Pokegear has been a very useful one. 3 copies of Nest Ball just to set up Pokemon in the early game. 4 Colorless Experiment, which really allows us to dig through our deck and hunt down those rare candies. 2 copies of Research, 1 copy of Escape Rope, 2 copies of Beach Court, and then 2 copies of Boss's Orders. So yeah, pretty interesting deck, I would say. Of course, it's not like everyone's cup of tea because it's a toolbox deck and it's not going to be very consistent sometimes. But because you're only playing a 3-2 line of a stage 2, no mid evolution or anything like that, it's pretty fun, honestly, and it is fairly consistent despite its flaws, so I do recommend giving this one a go if you haven't already. But yeah, it's been Emma Power, and thank you for watching.